மக்கள் தொலைக்காட்சியின் மகத்தான நேயர்களே, ஆகச் சிறந்த நிகழ்ச்சிகளை, அண்மை செய்திகளை விரைவாய் கண்டுகளிக்க அதிஉன்னத வாய்ப்பு. செறிவூட்டப்பட்ட தொழில்நுட்பம் கொண்ட மக்கள் தொலைக்காட்சியின் செயலியை ஆண்ட்ராய்டு பயன்பாட்டாளர்கள் கூகுள் பிளே ஸ்டோரில் இருந்து தரவிறக்கம் செய்யுங்கள். தரமான தமிழ் நிகழ்ச்சிகளை தங்கு தடை ஏதுமின்றி இலவசமாய் கண்டுகளியுங்கள்.
Of Pondicherry, the French Institute of Pondicherry, and many French universities. So we've been trying to work together and to understand each other, which was not always that simple. So I'm trying to kind of reconnect all the things that we have done in the perspective of climate change and around water, which is our first goal. So what should be the social effects of climate change in Tamil Nadu if we just look at water? As you all know, water is a vital element for any form of life. And water will and is already particularly impacted by climate change and in a different way in different climatic conditions. The first Sustainable Development Goals that focus on water is the number 6, clean water and sanitation. But very, very quickly we will realize that water is also very much interlinked and connected with the goal number 1, no poverty, with the goal number 2, zero hunger, with the goal number 3, good health and well-being. But we are still, all of us, doing like if we didn't know that everything will be impacted by the availability of clear water. In our work, we start from the premises that representation and uses built around water are also good indicators of social and societal evolutions. We choose to try to show this link via this particular socio-ecosystem, which is the one of the water tanks in India, in South India especially. And the idea is to ask people, do we all perceive and have an idea of what water is in the same way, or our cultural background influence the way we perceive water, and which value do we give to water, and in which context? My presentation will be in 3 parts along 3 different projects. It might sound scattered, but it's very much linked in our work, and it is all going to the same final goal. The first part of the presentation will be on the importance and the role of what remain of the traditional water management system. The second will be the contribution of these remaining tanks on the reduction of drought in context of water scarcity. The third one will be the link to agriculture, necessary evolution of agricultural practices, which will impact health, food, and food habits. As method, we made a lot of field work. We are working all together as colleagues, but we also had 2 PhD students, 4 post-PhD students, and a lot of students in bachelor's, which were doing their research and internship with us. So in these 10 years, I think we worked with more than 50 students, both French and Indian, always trying to work in mixed group just to enrich our knowledge. I put this slide just to give you an idea of how do we introduce the South Indian context when we present our work in France, which is absolutely not evident. The knowledge about what India is and Indian culture is absolutely absent, and how to compose it in one slide in 30 seconds. Also because we are not sure either we understood anything of India in only 10 years. So what we used to say when we present this specific context is that we say, okay, a dry tropical hydrogeomorphological context with a seasonal monsoon climate. Historically, there is an anthropogenic action that has made the possibility to potentiate the natural resources with a partially anthropogenic water storage system made of open air reservoirs. We describe Indian society as a highly hierarchical society from the social, cultural, occupational, and economic point of view, with a certain degree of acceptance of this hierarchy, where the sense of immanent and at the same time the sense of transcendent are very present, and they are very much linked to water and to water imagination and symbolism, and where the relation with the environment itself passes through this transcendent, and where human beings only occupy one place among others. First picture, you see a map of the Chennai outskirts and towards Andhra Pradesh in 1955, where the traditional system of water management was still extremely present, and where you see, if you go closer, almost half of the land is water. Almost half of the land is occupied by these open-air reservoirs that you call tanks. This system is a system inherited by the past, by the Chola dynasty, and is partially man-made, but it was, I say partially because most of the tanks are placed in a place where there was already a little slope, and man only built part of the boundaries. This system was organized in big, smaller, and different size of tanks, all related among them, just to not to waste water and use the overflow channel to be sure that everything is filled at the maximum, and related to channel to irrigate agriculture. Different kind of tanks for different kind of uses in urban, peri-urban, and rural areas, with different sizes and with different specific purposes. My picture has disappeared, but. Can you put it in slide mode? So, yeah, here you see the picture of 55. Next. Yeah, this is just a zoom. Next. This is a sketch that the students made about how the system was conceived and organized. You can go next. Here is the hierarchical scheme of all the tanks and different uses of the tanks. Next. And one of the first problems in the evolution of the tanks is that tanks were not only the storage of water, but also all the surrounding area, which were conveying the water towards the tanks. And this, which is catchment area or command area or Purambok, was misunderstood by the British rule, and they thought it was wasteland, just because it was not producing any specific revenue. So this land has been progressively encroached and built upon, which means that less and less water is naturally flowing to the reservoir itself, which was one of the main functioning of this system. You see upper, the smaller and still existing urban tanks, which are temple tanks, and in the lower picture, a very big area for irrigation in rural area. Next. But this system started changing since the Green Revolution for many different reasons. There was a partial redistribution of lands. There were public subsidies to democratize the access to water, and government was specifically going towards borewells and pumps, which of course can give you water through the water table, and in theory you don't need the tanks there anymore. There was a reduction of the total agricultural area because urban pressure and industrialization were taking place instead of this agricultural area, but the raising of the production per surface didn't make the difference in terms of global production. There was, and there is still what we could call a draft of capillary system of supplying water to the taps in big cities, because you all know that not all the different neighborhoods of Chennai are regularly have regularly water from the tap. Many have to be supplied by the water metro with the trucks. There was an overall increase in the demand for water for domestic use. As much as we live in cities and we have the idea that water is just coming from nowhere and from the tap, and as much as we want, the number of liters of water we use every day increase drastically. And there are also some contemporary uses which are very much related to leisure. Many of the tanks, the remaining tanks inside Chennai city, are transformed into leisure places where you can go for promenade, along the banks, etc. And there is just a beginning of the understanding of the fact that all these tanks are very important for the infiltration of the water in the water table and to avoid the infiltration of sea water, which will transform all this clear water into salt water. And something which is even more difficult, tanks are appearing and disappearing. Some of the tanks are totally dry during the dry season. So it's very easy, let's say, to build on them just because 6 months of a year you don't even realize that there's a tank there. We have been making some interviews in Tank Road in Chennai, and people were just surprised that they have 20 centimeters of water every year in their house, while other surrounding neighborhoods do not. And I mean, they never thought that Tank Road meant that they were in a tank, and that was normal, that the water was naturally flowing in this area because it's a little bit lower than the surrounding neighborhoods. We've been working in all the 85 tanks into Pondicherry just to, via remote sensing, see how they shrinked in between 1980s and today. And we specifically focused on 2 of the tanks, one which is now totally urban and one which is still partially rural, which are Kanagan and Usteri. And if you see this picture, you will see how this tank shrunk. Only the blue part is what remained today as tank, while all the green part and a big part of what is built was initially the surface of the tank, which we'll see in this picture. So you see the upper picture where little by little the command area and the water area has been reclaimed and built upon and transformed into something which is not able to store water anymore, and only this little part is remaining, and this little part is very polluted because it's encroached by sewage, and it is totally covered with jacinth, which is eutrophizing even more the water. And tanks are very much different along the season because of the level of water, which is never the same. But according to the level of water, usage are not the same and cannot be the same. If you're only going along a tank for leisure, you will not accept that the tank is almost dry 6 months of a year. So you will ask, socially, ask to keep this water level fixed, which means to not use this water for other usage. While if you are living with this water and you use this water for some traditional uses, which can be cattle, washing clothes, not drinking, of course, or not anymore drinking, but all these domestic use cannot be overlapped. While in traditional uses, there were no contradiction among all the different uses. The uses which are been doing today of the water of the tanks is very quick conflicting among different categories of users. Next. And this tank, which remains peri-urban, is not used for agriculture anymore. It's only used for leisure. But local farmers associations are starting to reclaim the dried to use this water to irrigate their lands and their crops, just because they realize they cannot pump forever, and they have to pump deeper and deeper because the level of the water table is becoming lower. And the idea is that we wanted to observe and ask to people which is their representation of this water, which is the representation of the tanks, and what do they think they can use this water for. I cannot give you all the details, of course, but just very few findings, is that poor people, especially in rural areas, tend to live off their environment for firewood, for fishing, for water, etc., while the wealthiest live only in their environment and either use it for leisure purposes or wish to protect it from human actions, bird sanctuaries, for example. This is all more true in the case of water spaces, which concentrate multiple expectations and issues, which become de facto contradictory to each other. This cleavage prevents compromises from being reached between what Gadilan Gupta called the ecosystem people and the omnivores, which are beneficiaries of economic development and consumers of product from the entire biosphere. The latter often contribute to the exclusion of the former, while who no longer have access to resources. They are nevertheless vital in the name of environmental conservation or other used considered more modern, such as leisure. This is what Amica Baviskar defines as bourgeois environmentalism. Next. What we see in our case studies that two of the reservoirs of Usteri and Kanagan are conflicts. What we observe are the conflicts of use, but above all, conflicts of users. The transition from a rural tank to a urban or peri-urban lake is manifested by the multiplication of tensions, given that urbanization pushes for a single use, leisure and recreation or protection, instead of allowing several which were complementary. What role can the spatial scale and size of the reservoir of the dominant social class of users play in the management of these conflicts? In reality, the inhabitants of the underprivileged classes who live around Kanagan are gradually being dispossessed of traditional uses in favor of a vision that evokes the benefits of nature in the city or even those of the ecosystem services that are provided by nature. The stigmatization of traditional practices by the wealthier and privileged classes leads to value judgment that blame the underprivileged classes for encroachment, pollution, dirt and garbage accumulation. Around Usteri, one might think that these conflicts are less apparent because of the peri-urban context. But this is not the case. Uses considered as modern, boat trips, for example, and respectful on the environment are opposed to the demand of farmers' associations who aspire, again, to have access to the water for agricultural uses. So what we have done is to try to model, through remote sensing and modeling work, what could be the contribution of the surviving tanks, because many have been lost already. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was next. And we have done I don't find the word. A program for the computer which will be able, month by month, where you feed all the different criteria, how much water came from the rain, how much the temperature variation was, to realize how much of this water will remain in the tank. And this will be possible for the next 10, 15, 30, 50 years. We will just have to adjust the level of rain and the level of heat and the level of wind, because in the past, water was enough to fill the tank. and the water was remaining for some months. But the rising of temperature will make this water, through evapotranspiration, to become less and less, much quicker than in the past. So we will not be able to count on all this water. Water will be less globally, very much concentrated in a number of days, which will mean that not all the tanks will be filled because the overflowing channels are not working anymore. And once it is there, a lot will evaporate. A lot will infiltrate the water tables. What will be the amount of water remaining? And this we can calculate very precisely, day by day, according to temperature and wind speed. Next. So yeah, this is what I was saying. So the model is based on evapotranspiration on the tank surface, in infiltration, in rainfall, in contribution of surface runoff, in contribution of underground water, in eutrophication and sedimentation, and all the other losses. So we will exactly can calculate how much water we will have in each tank and at which moment of the year. Next. And what is the link to agriculture, agricultural crop and health? The Green Revolution has led to the quadrupling of India's population since 1950 without any notable famines. But its continuation requires profound reforms as to meet climate change and UNDP's Sustainable Development Goals. Climate change is jeopardizing paddy in some areas due to the started and awaited water scarcity. The high carbohydrate content in Green Revolution rice varieties, especially when refined, has led to public health problems, and the public distribution system also promoted paddy consumptions, which with nearly a third of Indians suffering from diabetes. And all these things are very much related to water, to what water allows you to do, and how to manage in a global social approach. One of the possibilities, and academia has been pointing out this for at least 20 to 30 years, is the reevaluation of some other crops, and specifically for Tamil Nadu, of millets. Because millets are both nutritious and less vulnerable to climate change. And also of the leaves that you call kirei, which are, again, part of the traditional food habits, but let's say not traditional anymore for a big part of the population. So the millets do not require pesticides or irrigation. They are numerous varieties. They are very adaptable. They are drought resistant. They can be grown on very steep slopes, but they do not correspond anymore to people's taste. Only people who do not have the choice are still used to eat millets. And that is why we went to the Jawari Hills as site, one of our site study case, because the scheduled tribe that still live there are using millets in their everyday consumption. And we also linked this new way of looking at what agriculture can do to fight against climate change to women empowerment. We are following self-help group of women in agriculture and in preparation of food and in street vendors, small entrepreneurs, with the idea that women can also make the difference in understanding what importance of water is and can be. If you look at millets in India, India is producing, India is producing the 20% of the world's millet production. India is the world's leading producer of millets, but only the 5% of the global cereal production of India is millets. So again, the idea is that we have to think differently. We will not be able to eat only inundated rice, which is paddy, for the future, because we will not have enough water to have all this field full of water. And that millets, apart from the taste, is much better from any health, food, nutrition, and ecological point of view. And it could also be a kind of potential factor for development of Jawadi Hills. The traditional cultivation of millets are possible because in the hills, due to the slope, farmers couldn't transform all their lands into paddy. So they transform into paddy only what was flat, but it's a very small surface of what they are cultivating, and all the rest remains on millet. But the fact that it remains on millet, since that millet is only rain-fed and 6 months of the year, most of these farmers are obliged to migrate to Kerala, to the big tea, coffee estates, because they do not earn enough money to survive for the 6 months where they do not grow millet. We went through the number of days of rain and how much rain in the last 50 years. So we used the standardized precipitation index from 1950 to 2022 and realized that there are longer, more frequent and intense episodes of drought that you see in red going down very deep, very deeper since 2000. And there are heavy rains intensification with a record in rainfall in 24 hours in December 2007. So water is less in amount and it falls down in a reduced number of days, which means that it's, as my colleague already said, much difficult to collect it. So how those millets could answer to the current and future challenges in terms of food security and food sovereignty in the country after the Green Revolution, in a context of adaptation to climate change and a context of population growth. Can the traditional cultivation of millets, which marks the Jawadi Hills, for example, constitute an inspiring example? Can it be a factor of development for local farmers? Again, we went through the millet in the Jawadi Hills and realized that 65 of the millet crops are in the area, and the portion of small millets with this 65 is 93%. So a lot of millets is still present. Next. And we went through different farms, as much diverse as possible, but we realized that 68% of farms are less than 1 hectare, which is, as you may imagine, extremely small and at the very limit of survival. 90% of these small farms are only using rain-fed agriculture. So they do not have not an open well, not a bore well, not a pump, and on a deep slope, they are still only growing millet with a rain-fed way. Next, we had an idea of what each one of the farmers is growing in a sample of farms with the rotation of crops and with the kind of irrigation that they are using. This is a relatively big farmer because it's 1.4 acres, so the farmer has the possibility of having a wide variety of crops, including contract crops, which are growing in the Jawadi Hills, and he is not obliged to migrate, for example. But if you go to next, this one, which has 0.2 acres, so an extremely small farm, is producing only 3 crops. He has no mechanical irrigation system. He has valley floor and slopes, and he is obliged to migrate 6 months a year to have enough money to survive. Next. So millet used to be a very popular crop in traditional food in Tamil Nadu. In the context of climate change, millet is also fighting against soil erosion and climatic variation. It's a very nutritious food, and there is a kind of current context of millet re-evaluation. The public distribution system is, since last year, introducing part of millets within the rice parcels. And some wealthier classes are starting re-evaluating millets for healthy reasons. Also, the public policies toward health, and specifically diabetes, are promoting millet as a much more adequate cereal because of its nutritious content. But, now you can stay in the previous and then I'll finish. But millet is for food and for financial security for the farmers more than a cash crop. They grew millet for them. They don't even try to sell it. And it's not consumed every day by everyone. All the farmers are complaining that their children do not want to eat millet anymore, and that they are asking for Chinese dried noodles. Millet farmers are still obliged to migrate, and there is an increase in millet in the demand that we observe, but it doesn't correspond to an increase in prices that the farmers are paid. And irrigated crops and contract crops are still considered as a good investment for the development, even if the farmer realize that all the pesticides they are obliged to use by contract are very much impoverishing their soils, and that it will take them years to recover the fertility of the soil once they stop the contracted crops, but still they are very much in debt and they want to pay their debt before they can go back to a healthy way of agriculture. So just to conclude, even if it is still difficult to identify to what extent spatial and societal evolution are specifically related to the effects of climate change, while society and spaces are being submitted to a multi-criteria environment, it is already clear that temperature rising will dramatically overlap the other factors and impact populations, with an even more important effect on vulnerable ones. The whole water cycle is and will be impacted in Tamil Nadu and will push us to reconsider irrigated agriculture and crops, paddy in particular, as well as water consumption for all human needs. This will impact the whole society in its wide relation to water, but not only, since it will include health, food and food habits. The fight against food insecurity and for a population in good health has an eminently political dimension, as mitigation of climate change has. The most vulnerable population will be the heavily impacted by the reduction of available water. But at the same time, they also know how to do with this and how to cope with this. So just to conclude to a positive impact of social and climate change on the poorer part of the population, they have, through what we observed, skills and knowledge about how to live with scarcity, and particularly water scarcity. And we think that there's a lot we can learn from poorer people who cannot just open the tap and take a shower or a bath, and they can learn how to live with less availability of clear water. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable perspectives and insights. As we come to the end of this inaugural ceremony, it is my honor to invite Professor S.T. Akhilan Sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Sociology, University of Madras, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Very good afternoon. It gives immense pleasure to propose vote of thanks in this international conference entitled Social Consequences of Climate Change. Before proposing vote of thanks, I would like to share a few moments about the making of this the international event. Around 3 months ago, we were having the Chennai flood. Once again, after that, immediately we were also affected by the other part of Tamil Nadu. We had the flood. Then we were having kind of the discussion together with Tamilizan sir also. Then he said that we have to have kind of the event to study about this the flood. That the perspective has to be from the social consequences. So we thought that we have to conduct the event like the national level. But after that, when we come to know about the mitigation and even the consequences, this the consequences which has happened because of this the climate change, it is global wide. That's why we were making this as an international event. After that, then I will go for the proposing vote of thanks formally. Yesterday, we have received the communication from our registrar regarding this, the international event. Sir has given the message for us regarding the importance of conducting this, the event, international event. This is, he has given this justification also, like the significance of having this event. And this is the right time for us to know about, like, since we are talking about the climate change, but we have to take some effort to, the curb this, all that the efforts have to be taken place there in all the perspectives. So you can conduct this with the social aspects and even the economical aspects. He has given that direction to us. Here then, the inaugural program, we had the inaugural address which was given by Dr. Sowmiya Anbumani Madam, President Pasumai Thayagam, and President Alumni Association of Madras University. Ma'am has stressed about the reduction of the CFC gases, then the greenhouse gases also, melting of icebergs, rise of oceans, and then climate change such as the climate crisis and social crisis. Ma'am's experience, like what she has observed there in the the agrarian society, and even she has shared some moment that what she has taken some effort to give some ideas to the farmers also, to create kind of changes in the agricultural side. Then ma'am has given kind of the different terms such as the acute and the chronic refuges. This is a very essential portion that how the factors such as the push factors and pull factors which are there in the rural society, and that will create enormous the climatical changes there. Even one of the the studies which is going to provided here from the student, she is going to justify that how the urbanization is going to be creating the the support for the climate change. In the same time, the climate change itself going to create the urbanization. So this is going to be kind of observation ma'am has made. Then Dr. Laura Vedeli, Professor, Department of Spatial Planning and Environment, University of Tours, France, has given keynote address. Ma'am has spoken about the different types of ecosystems in evolutionary basis. She has classified her observation as a role of management system to reduce the pollution. That is one. And then the water scarcity. Then third one is agriculture and the protection of the farmland. And as we have been evident here, what she has shown in that the PPT, that kind of comparison during 1950s and 2022, what are the changes? In my opinion, that what she has observed, this is a kind of truly she has come up with the findings, because deliberately we come to know about the changes in the during because of this climate change in the urbanization and urban society also. Even she has appreciated the culture of India especially South Indian context. She has made the address. Then water management in 1950s with the photographs she has shown. Then dam construction in the olden days, like she has connected the irrigation, the agriculture, and then the socio-economic and cultural protections. See, finally, ma'am has given the suggestions how to protect the green environment. And even the green revolution is also one of the causes to create the impact upon the agriculture. Then this primary data-oriented research has come up with too many findings also. Finally, I thank all the faculty members, students, research scholars for their participation in this international conference on social consequences of the climate change. Still, we have to go with 2 more days, and all the best for all the participants for the presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite everyone to join for the national anthem.
Okay. Thank you. Please be seated. Please be seated for a moment. A little changes on the announcement. Yeah, little they have been. I welcome Professor Mohammad Hussain sir as Professor Head, Department of Geology, and Dean Student Affairs, Member Academic Council and Member Senate, and being here as being chair for the session, the upcoming scientific session. I welcome and all Dr. Parthiban from Department of Politics and Public Administrations, Departments 2, and all other colleagues, those who are joined after the inaugural and the main team of these presentations too. And with the few minutes of the ma'am to be having the note to the press, then the other plenary session will start. There are 2 speakers, they're waiting in online to start the plenary sessions. And ma'am is asking that it's a few minutes to have a brief with the media, then we will be, all the plenary sessions will begin, please. Okay. Thank you.
மக்கள் தொலைக்காட்சியின் மகத்தான நேயர்களே, ஆகச் சிறந்த நிகழ்ச்சிகளை, அண்மை செய்திகளை விரைவாய் கண்டுகளிக்க அதிஉன்னத வாய்ப்பு. செறிவூட்டப்பட்ட தொழில்நுட்பம் கொண்ட மக்கள் தொலைக்காட்சியின் செயலியை ஆண்ட்ராய்டு பயன்பாட்டாளர்கள் கூகுள் பிளே ஸ்டோரில் இருந்து தரவிறக்கம் செய்யுங்கள். தரமான தமிழ் நிகழ்ச்சிகளை தங்கு தடை ஏதுமின்றி